Greetings, welcome, and thanks for joining me. It's Christian of Standing Stones Healing. So honored to be here with you. So thank you so very much for joining me. In this week's episode of the Build Your Reiki Business podcast, we're talking about how to start a session. How to start a session. How do you start your sessions? Drop it down below for us and let us know how you start your Reiki sessions. But I'm going to chat a little bit about some of the things I talk about in the podcast episode, and I'll drop the link to that podcast episode down below so that you can tune in for more if you are so inclined and if you wish. But in this week's episode on how to start a session, I talk a little bit about how I start a session. So the ways in which I start a Reiki session. And I believe that one of the number one, really the number one way to start a session is to listen to our clients, to be open, to be available, to understand where they're coming from, what their needs are, and why they are coming to a session with us. So what they are seeking from that session. You know, that was my kitty right now. She's seeking some attention. Indeed, it is playtime right now in the Standing Stones Healing household. And so we have kitties running around playing and having a jolly good time. But how we start a session is really important because it, of course, sets the tone for the session. And so how we start a session with our clients really is important because it is going to, especially if they are a brand new client, really be a powerful first impression for them for what to expect in the session. And so the way that you show up, the way that you interact, the person that you are and who you bring to the session at the beginning of the session is really going to set the tone for the session and is going to impact whether or not the client comes back for a second session. So no matter how the session goes, how the session starts really does have a powerful impact. And so I encourage listening to our clients, paying attention to them, being open to any questions that they have. This is, I believe, something that's very important, that we always listen to our clients and that we are available to answer any questions that they have. And so that we're open to answering questions and that we provide the opportunity for them to ask any questions that we have, that we ask outright if they have any questions as we begin the session. So I definitely encourage this. You know, who we are as Reiki practitioners is not confined to the session itself. And so who we are as Reiki practitioners, how we show up in the session is not only who we are in the session. What I mean by that is that we bring who we are outside of the session to the session itself. And so if we want to have a positive experience in a session with our clients, we are bringing who we are outside of that session, and it's important for us to remember that the session doesn't end with the session, that who we are as a person and as a practitioner joins us in the session. And so I encourage us to start off our sessions with a spirit of openness, a spirit of welcoming, and a spirit of being open to any questions that a client might have. Indeed, it really comes down to having powerful listening skills. I believe that this is the most important thing that we can do as practitioners. I also believe that an important thing that we can do at the start of the session is to give the client some control. So to allow the client client to make some choices in the session, whether that's the music, the use of any essential oils, incense, or scents, the use of sound, singing bowls, or drums, that we give the client the choice to say yes or no to those things, to allow them to even decide whether they want the light on or off during the session. That is all up to the client. I believe that it's important for us to give clients the choice, and also importantly, the choice of touch. Whether the client for an in-person session wants to have hands laid directly on them or not, I believe that this is essential in our sessions, and honoring those client wishes is essential. So I definitely encourage that in our sessions. In my sessions, I often use the drum in my Reiki sessions. And so while I like the drum, maybe not everyone does. And so I will say to a client at the beginning of the session that I use the drum. I start off with drumming and I explain that that's not part of the traditional system of Reiki, but I like to begin my sessions in that way. And is that okay with them? Another thing that I often do in my sessions is that at the end of them, I will draw a card, a tarot card, an oracle card, whatever it might be, for a message for the client to take with them on their way. And I always mention this, and is that okay? I've never had anyone say no, by the way, but I believe it's always important for us to ask. I also believe, finally, that it's important for us to set expectations, for us to explain what will happen during the session, how the session will go, and what to expect at the end of the session. And so when we can narrate the experience for the client, they know what to expect. And when we have predictable experiences and we know what to expect, it greatly decreases our sense of fear or potential discomfort. We can relax. We feel a little more open to feeling a little more vulnerable because we know what to expect. And so I do advocate, as part of my practice, for sure I do this, to explain to the client what they can expect for our time together. So please do drop it in the comments for us and let us know, how do you start a session? What are your recommendations for starting a session? Please do feel free to share that with us. And I'm sending so many blessings and best wishes to your sessions. You can learn more at the podcast episode for this week. I'll drop that link down below so that you can go there straight away as well. So I'm sending lots of blessings and best wishes to all of your sessions.